Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Chair, I just want to talk about quick question sustainability versus long-term sustainability, employment versus unemployment. When the space that has been created by our own government in relation to land exploration without compensation, that how about municipalities buy land and build houses or speak banks to build housing for municipal and paying services because we're staying back kodata bethu eziyadini. So that's the first issue that municipality, I think, we should consider going forward. But the second issue is that we need to talk to as part of the quick cash on the revenue collection. That as municipal employees who own houses or flats and so on, why municipalities does not have a direct deductions from our own pay slips as municipal employees, including political office bearers, so that we don't have an issue of us making excuses that so and so, please, block please, an arrangement that is outside that one. How about applying that into this issue as part of quick cash, as part of sustainability going forward? But the other point, which I think is important, is that those of us who run away from paying services, who decide to build houses in villages and so on, or outside town, where we are not going to pay taxes and so on. How about developing a framework that is going to guide us, which is going to be legislated throughout the country or throughout the province, that says some of us who reside in those areas but who are working for government or private sector, who are in so much and who are qualifying to pay services. How about developing a framework that is going to guide so that we are able to pay even if we are running away from the city? So I think, Chair, that we need to consider that as well in terms of developing a framework that is going to guide that process going forward, or whether in a form of bylaws in various municipalities in the province. But second last issue, Chair, is that we must do an audit or assessment that over the last 2 years or 3 years so, how much have we spent as municipalities in terms of legal issues as against challenging cases of workers that can be managed internally? How much have been spent in that space? Then the last issue is an issue that speaks to the outsourcing and privatization. Over the last 2 years, singomasipala imali nesesichithile in doing that thing in terms of outsourcing and privatizing some of the municipal services. That auditing is important, that Salga must do, so that we're able to say, going forward, how then do we address such issues so that we don't find ourselves again trapped in that environment of outsourcing and privatizing some of the services. But at the same time, Chair, we must also, because taxpayers are on strike now, because tariffs, increase on tariffs versus service delivery issues. So we need to consider such issues.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who wants to say a last word so that I can give over to the chairperson, Mamungaton?
I take that these are inputs to municipalities from the speakers. The issue of what needs to be looked at by municipalities is the issue of illegal connections. It talks to what the gentleman has just said in terms of the extensions outside the municipal space, and people are getting all the services. So the illegal connections, that is more especially on electricity, on water services and electricity theft. Chairperson, I think what was said was were inputs to strengthen revenue collection, and also the issue of reviewing of indigent registers and update thereof for better collection. Just at the last word, to announce or to appreciate all municipalities, the issue of at least this financial year, all municipalities managed to submit annual financial statements on the 31st of October. Some of them even submitting earlier than that, as early as September, because they were ready. Thank you very much. Can we give a big
Thank you very much to the panelists. Enkosi kakhulu, Mr. Mene. I think, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, you have had the discussion. But I know that after this second discussion, we'll come up with a summation. Bancedise ke Vuvu. Ngubani? With what you have here, ixesha lethu lihambile. I know ukuba I was praying that at least if we can finish at 10:30. Thank you very much. Siyanikhulula ningehla. Buso oyifune sibini. Sosibambe mamnqodo. Let me call Mr. Matomela, Ubel, as apanga phambili to come to the second discussion, to be the panel kwindawo ka Mr. Sokoni is Mr. Matomela. You'll call the panelist here. Mr. Matomela Kepai O.R. Tambo is responsible for the district development model. I know he's very much passionate about it, and there are strides. Kula district development model. He's no longer going to talk about it. He'll direct this session, here panelist. Is Zakepel.
Thanks very much, Program Director, the Executive Mayor. Let me greet you, greet the Chairperson of the South African Local Government Association, the Eastern Cape, greet the PEC members, greet all honorable leaders, as well as honorable mayors, speakers, chief whips, municipal managers. Let me observe the protocol. As has been indicated, I'm going to be just whippering this session. Initially, I was going to share the district development model in terms of OR Tambo, but basically I'm requested therefore to now whipper this session, and as such I'll do as such. However, when we sum up, I think I'll have an opportunity to share the context in terms of how far are we in OR Tambo. In this session, I think what is quite critically, Honorable Chair, has been that there's been various sessions that had undertaken from yesterday. But what I can reflect on, we have just looked on the genesis and principles of local government, its objectives. We have just looked on the systems and structures. We have just looked on the financial matters. And now we come to the critical area of planning. How do we then deal with planning? And this panel discussion is going to be around that. It reminds me, therefore, that you can deal with all those issues, but when you come to one of the key fundamentals in any organization, it's more on planning. It reminds me then of the organizational development principles or ethos. Those who have been in the organizational development, model development, they will talk about your 7 S's. How do you then ensure then that your shared values, how do you deal with your systems, your structures, your strategy, your skills, your staff, and everything. And therefore, is that a period where we look on the planning, because planning cover all those matters in terms of then ensuring then that you have a healthy, sustainable, and be able to drive your organization. Allow me then, honourable members, without wasting time, to call upon the panelists that are going to be actually participating in this session. I think my report will be shared at a later stage for the purpose of then sharing OR Tambo. As you can see in the panel, I was supposed to share the progress on the DDM, but for the purpose of this, allow me to actually allow the other panelists, and then when I sum it up, I'll just make a reflection on the OR Tambo report in that regard. In this panel discussion, we'll have the Department of Local Government and Traditional Affairs in the province, which is Umama Upashi Khoboj. I don't know whether it's linking visually or any representative for him. Oh, there is Don Nyatela who's going to represent Umama Upashi Khoboj. As I've indicated also, I'm supposed to share the progress in terms of the regional planning and DDM in OR Tambo, which I will deal with that. Let me also welcome Utata Umnyemba from Amatole District Municipality. I saw him. Utata Umnyemba, I think I've saw him. Yes, Umnyemba is one of the panelists that will share with us in terms of the planning. Again, let's welcome Desiree Sihlapelo from the Waterberg District Municipality in Limpopo, Salga team. I don't know whether team that is going to link it visually. Oh, Desiree, thanks very much. Welcome. And again, let's welcome the other veteran municipal manager, Utata Umahlasela from the Mngoma local municipality. Part of also the panelists will be Hope Makidimashe, Professor Hope Makidimashe from the United Nations People's Fund will also be part of us. Oh, thanks very much. All the panelists are part of here. As I've indicated, honorable members, I'm not going to waste time. I will allow those to share in that context. But quite fundamentally, as I've indicated, we have looked on all those things from the genesis of local government and its objectives, its systems and how it's functional, how does it deal with ethical conduct and accountability, and we have moved to talk about the financial health. And we're saying now, let's look on the basic principle of planning. Planning is a fundamental issue that had to guide the performance. Planning is a fundamental issue that had to guide how do you monitor and evaluate. Planning is a fundamental issue that had to guide you in terms of moving forward, of ensuring that you are able to deliver the necessary services in terms of your systems. Let me welcome the first one, who will be the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Utata Don Nyatela, to have reflection in that context. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Chair, thank you very much, Mr. Matomela. I'm Don Nyatela. I'm representing COGTA, and I'm also here on the behalf of DDG Khoboji. As COGTA, we have been mandated to support and drive DDM in the province, and fortunately enough, province was one of the beneficiaries for piloting the DDM in the country. Of course, we understand that the DDM sometimes is perceived as a new concept, as a new model, and however, there are still very strong views that the model seeks to embrace what the government should be doing, and it's just a way of reminding each other of what we should be doing as enshrined in the jurisprudence of the country. And it is, of course, anchored in the Constitution, Chapter 3 on cooperative governance. It is anchored in various pieces of legislations, your white paper on local government, your IGR Framework Act, as the object of the Act are clear on how the three spheres should be working and interacting with each other. And again, it is also centered in some pieces of legislation and specific act, such as Section 153 in the Chapter 7 of the Constitution, as it guides all the three spheres of government to plan within the context and the needs of the communities. And therefore, any kind of planning that is outside the profile and the needs of the community is not constitutional. Of course, there is also a specific section of the Act, Section 47 of the IGR Framework Act, that also empowers the minister to invoke specific provisions in an event where there is a need for government to be reminded of the need to follow a framework of coordination. The background is given against the context and the need to cover the issues of jurisprudence and legalities around DDM, because there are some questions being raised that DDM is now taking over the IDP. So some clarities, of course, are needed in that space, that the DDM is enshrined as a way of and an approach towards planning, and it seeks to enhance and support the current planning processes as well as the IDP. Just to also give it in context and a short background, brief background, as to also why did we have to come with the DDM, or national and the presidency brought DDM. You will recall that there was a 25-year government review audit that was conducted, and there were some findings that were made out of that review. And of course, that the government is operating in silo mentality was one of the key findings. And of course, it began to raise a need for government to realize that we should be working in a cooperative approach, and we need to also ensure that we address the lack of integration. The budget are sparsely planned, and we need to ensure that we address the issues around spatial integration, and also the need to ensure that we have got integrated planning. We all know that on the 17th of September, the model was launched for the first time in the country in OR Tambo by the presidency, after, of course, it was approved by the Joint Cabinet Committee on the 13th of August. From the pilot, this year in September, we marked 12 months since it has been established. And in trying, of course, since it is a pilot, to contextualize and come with the concept around the model. The model is not a metaphysic model in the biological world. It is a created model, and therefore the model itself has to find itself an expression within the government, and there should be then some cardinal points that needs to be set up so that the model begins to adapt and be plugged into the existing government system. And key to the model is the visioning process, which I think it kind of takes too long, because it begins to ask government to reshape at a district level and come with all the visioning setting and what is it that the government plans to do within the district space. So that process of visualization of DDM entails a lot of processing, including profiling processes, including planning. But one of also key cardinal point of DDM is a planning process that it calls for, that the three spheres of government must be able to plan jointly and be able to come up with one plan, one budget for one district. And again, the key domain around DDM is the institutionalization process. How do you institutionalize it? And in the process of institutionalizing the DDM, there are some key pillars that we need to focus on. The technical institutionalization of DDM, the governance institutionalization of DDM, and the organizational institutionalization of DDM, so that the DDM begins to flow in the veins and the DNA of government, so that it can be sustainable in its operation, rather than to create a model that will float and not adapt and anchor within the government system. As we all know, in terms of the vision, that of course it shares the same vision with the NDP. I won't be dwelling too much on that. And key to the planning process is of DDM, which forms the core and the crux of DDM, are the values of integrated, as I have indicated, integrated budgeting and integrated planning, so as to come up with one plan. There is, of course, some characteristics that we need to look into when we talk about the DDM planning. Basically, there are 6 key areas that are being viewed as anchors for ensuring that there's planning. There is a need to ensure that we cover in detail the profiling of the district in its entirety, or the metro, and of course, that has culminated into the development of the district profiles. We have got the ministerial approved profiles for each district and metros. Of course, the process is an unfolding process. It's not a cast in stones, and it will be, of course, reviewed annually. And of course, my colleague, Mr. Matomela, will be touching on the details as to how far that district is in terms of ensuring that there are proper profiles in a step towards developing one plan. So there are these 6 steps. Of course, DDM also focus on the governance and improving of administration within our district and local space, the infrastructure re-engineering, the economic repositioning, the spatial restructuring and spatial planning, and also the integration of service delivery by the 3 spheres of government. Again, one of the issues that we would like to highlight from the provincial and national perspective about DDM is that it came at a time that already there were some initiatives around the establishment of a PMU. And that concept was a concept that was developed basically to seek to find and explore some partnerships so that there could be enough capacity technically to support the municipalities. And now we are in the process of integrating the 2. Of course, the partnership, the main partner from the private sector part is Development Bank of South Africa, DBSA, and in the, of course, MOU that we have with the DBSA, we have expanded it to cover the DDM. So we are aligning and integrating and ensuring that we have got a DDM that will focus into the improvement of finance for the municipalities, and we also seek to ensure that through this partnership we are able to benefit from the lending as well as the non-lending support. There are some projects already that have been advanced through the PMU, and I think the municipalities will be aware of the calls that have been made for submission for the support through the PMU, and now we are in the integration process of the PMU and the DDM because they share the common objectives, and those objectives is to ensure that we have got the high impact strategic project and catalytic projects within the municipalities that will be supported with the technical capacity as well as the lending support. The terms, in terms of planning for DDM, we've got the short, the medium, and the long term. And the short term from 2019, since its establishment, up to 2022, is just to ensure that we have got the profiles, we do the gap analysis, and we identify the quick interventions, and we fix the problems immediately. And then, of course, in the medium to long term, then we will do the proper sustainability of the model within the system. There is some work that has been done, and in the 3-year DDM implementation, we have got 4 programmatic areas as the province. We seek to ensure that there is proper consultation and mobilization. We want to ensure that there is institutionalization of DDM, and the planning aspects is being taken care of, as well as we implement the DDM. I have given in my presentation some brief progress as we unfold and implement the DDM. Consultations have been made with the various structures, including the PCF, including Minimax, and of course, we also had an opportunity to have some political champion engagement programs that we have rolled out through national DDM political champions. And the province has also appointed the MECs for specific districts and metros to serve as political champions. There are some projects, of course, under the umbrella of PMU that we seek to ensure that they will also be implemented within the principles and underpinned by the DDM. And key to DDM is the establishment of the DDM hub. I think my colleague, Mr. Matomela, will be talking in detail about the progress and the lessons, of course, that we'll learn from them in the establishment of the DDM hub. There are some challenges already that we begin to, of course, as we traverse the road of piloting the DDM in the province that we have picked up. With the funding of the hub, we depend on the partnership. I think there's a need to ensure that we build the capacity and we strengthen and lobby the resources so that we can be able to quickly roll out the establishment of the hubs and come up with a viable approach so that other districts and the metros can begin to benefit quickly. It took about 12 months to establish the hub for OR Tambo as a pilot alone. Then it begins to tell and raise questions, how long will it then take to roll out in other districts? And already there's a lot of interest from the districts and the metros as to how are we going then to ensure that the DDM in its all facets and areas is being supporting other districts. And of course, the DDM depends on IGR. If the IGR is not functional, then the DDM is going to be weak. So we need to ensure that we've got strong IGR system. We are able to ensure that there is cooperation and coordination within the three spheres of government in terms of getting the support. OR Tambo, of course, will then be highlighting the challenges. I don't want, of course, to spoil their presentation on the DDM. And the key issue, again, is around the integration and developing one plan and one budget. And that we foresee that there's going to be a challenge in the process of ensuring that we channel our own resources as different departments and as different spheres into one direction. That process, of course, is going to be a process that, of course, will pose some key challenges. And I think, Chair, with those few words, I would like to note that the DDM requires partnerships. We need to ensure that we partner with universities, we partner with private sector so that we are able to implement the DDM. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're changing the gear. I'll request to Mr. Vuyomusana to come and moderate this panel because Mr. Matomela has got to do the highlight of the pilot of OR Tambo, being the DDM where it is piloted. So we're giving Mr. Vuyomusana. You'll also give a summation of their presentation at the end of their presentation. Simiseleke.
Thanks a lot, Executive Mayor. Good morning to the entire Salga leadership, the Executive Mayors and Mayors present, and as well as our municipal managers from across the province, and including the guests that are coming from other fraternal organizations. I will not waste time because Mr. Matomela has introduced the entire discussion appropriately. But just to ask one of the other colleagues present here to join us in the panel, in the name of Mr. Sbia, who is going to be sharing from a private sector's perspective experiences in respect of dealing with the DDM work and how they have been interfacing with municipalities. I am also expecting, albeit this has been just arranged this late, that we will be joined by one colleague from the Eastern Cape Socio-Economic Consultative Council, who will be augmenting in the discussion with respect to particularly lessons that come from an organization that supports the DDM rollout in the province, in particular with the pilot being the central focus that is OR Tambo, which will really be augmenting the discussion from the angle of what Mr. Matomela will be providing. Can I then, without much ado, ask that we proceed to the next panelist, and that being Mr. Matomela himself, to present from the OR Tambo perspective how we have been able to launch the pilot, how we've been able to manage the processes in ensuring that the pilot is appropriately institutionalized, and including in particular the experiences that we have acquired in the course of that, and how we are going to be managing it going forward, and which will be lessons, I'm sure, from all of us as different districts and the metros in how we are going to be rolling out the DDM in the province. Can I give over to you, Mr. Matomela?
Thanks very much, President. Is it okay? No, thanks very much. Much appreciated. I'm going to just touch on the progress in OR Tambo. My report basically is looking on the DDM, refocusing local government planning to follow regional planning approach and providing the hands-on support and resources. I think my colleague here, I'm going to just sum it up in terms of the progress sharing the progress that we have made in OR Tambo and some of the potential opportunities that we're attending moving forward. I think my colleague here have shared a lot in terms of the genesis of the DDM and its objective. But much, as I had said, that I think it's more appreciated that DDM has been at the center to ensure then that we are able to mobilize all the sectors, sector departments, society, NGOs and everyone to the planning paradigm and also to the execution of the local government affairs. And again, to ensure then that the three spheres of government are able to ensure then that their planning, budgeting and implementation is focused on the single joint one plan and harmonizing the IDPs and be able to talk about the spatial integrated single government plan. We view this, therefore, in the context that if you look on the DDM in its original concept, there are key deliverables that are expected. One is to ensure then that you have your one plan, and that one plan must be informed by a detailed demographic profile of the district with more and evidence-based information, which is more than looking on the research and as such. And again, to ensure then that you deal with your spatial restructuring, you deal with your economic position, you assess and deal with in detail of your infrastructure and engineering, you deal with the issues of governance, which yesterday has spoken a lot in terms of how to then ensure then that governance broadly and institutional arrangement is dealt with, and integrated service delivery. All those we viewed as chapters of the DDM itself. As we view those, therefore, we looked on that as OR Tambo and said, quite critically, let's locate and have an understanding of this DDM. When we located it, I think it's quite critically, honorable members, to look on that. Key in the DDM, what we have observed is that it is talking about regional planning. It's talking about the development planning. It's talking about your socio-economic development within the region. And this is not a new topic. If you recall, I think yesterday, most of the speakers spoke about the genesis of local government, your white paper and all that. And this has been the issue around the DDM. And therefore, we're saying DDM is more about back to basics. We're going to basics of what we need to have done in that. And it puts planning at the center of government to look on performance and ensure then that you drive your sectors together. And again, it appreciates the various legislation, quite critical when the president launched the DDM, indicated that for the DDM to be executed, it doesn't need to go and review a legislation. But however, the existing legislative framework is still necessary and relevant to drive the DDM, and therefore appreciated on that. We went further and say, therefore, let's look on other scholars, what they've produced in terms of DDM. We went at a global context and we went at a local context. We looked on one of the studies that was done by Joanne Evereng from the Australian governance within the Queensland region, Central Queensland, in terms of the study that they've conducted. There, what they were looking on, it was around regional planning as a good governance tool or impacting to the good governance. While we were looking on that, remember I said, when we look on DDM itself, we view it as more talking about regional planning. Therefore, if there's a study of that nature, let's come and paste it to the district itself. And again, we went to South Africa and look on one of the paper that was produced by, if you call the Johnny Kutzer's paper, which was talking about the transformation of municipal development planning in South Africa in post-1994, where they were looking on impressions and impasse in that regards, without touching on the paper, but key issues that emerged from those two studies. One, with the paper that emerged from the Evereng study in Australia, it came clear that for a regional planning, it's one of the key issues that involve collaboration between broad range of stakeholders. And it fit well because DDM is talking about that. Again, the study concluded to say that for regional planning to be successful, or regional planning is one of the key fundamental issues in ensuring that you have a sustainable development and a balanced economic, social, and environmental goals. And if it worked in Australia, looking on each federal nature, it fits well in our district. Lastly, it says also that study that your regional planning is one of the key issues that focus on regional scale, that is intermediate between state and local government. It was focusing more in Australia on the context that you have your national government and the local governments. In our case, we have a national, provincial, and local. Therefore, it says regional planning is one of the fundamental issues that we can use in a district environment, and therefore, it's relevant in that nature. Coming to the Johnny Kutzer's 2012 paper, which he presented, I'm not going to touch on the paper, but basically on the conclusions that emerged in that paper. We looked in thoroughly when we were going to do its implementation and institutional arrangement. And we find that there were key conclusions that were lifted in that time. Among those conclusions were that we need to improve and strengthen re-engineering institutional structures in terms of planning. We need to build capacity of the planners in the local governments. We need to cultivate a developmental and entrepreneurial approach in terms of our planning. And the paper also lifted a need for the planners to take sustainability serious. And we can go to one of the report of the South African Cities Network of 2006, which was saying that as we're planning, we're not taking sustainability in a serious manner. And therefore, this regional planning or DTM is one of the key issues that dealt with that. And again, to ensure then that we fertilize or we plow and ensure then that we train our trainers. We ensure then that the issue of leadership, we develop appropriate and strong development planning and institutional arrangement. I think most of the leaders yesterday spoke about all those things that if you want to improve your local governance, you must build the capacity and the skills in that context. Therefore, what are the routes that we have undertaken without wasting time, having appreciated that if you talk about DTM, it's an issue that have been tested and it proved that regional planning is fundamental in ensuring then that you improve on those areas. We looked on the roadmap that was presented by National. If you look on the introduction of DTM, when my colleagues have indicated that last year, the presidency introduced it and COGTA as a custodian of that, presented a roadmap, and that roadmap was saying, let's move from then up to May 2012, adopting our IDPs normal as they are. But quite critically, we do reprioritization and look on the quick wins. And then when we move from after we have adopted the IDPs, we move towards then the new electoral mandate. We know that we can't shy away that we are going to the other term of local government next year. And therefore, that's where we're going to be driving the implementation of one plan. And therefore, our effort should be around that, dealing with the detailed research, dealing with diagnostic studies, and produce all those so that when we start the term, we're able to talk about one single plan of government. And that single plan of government will be implemented from then up to 2050. So we appreciated that roadmap that was presented and be able to say, what do we need to do? And therefore, in terms of OR Tambo. What did we do in OR Tambo, therefore? We started to then develop an institutional arrangement. Our institutional arrangements was fundamental, guided by key issues, which are, we call it, the pillars, or what you call the chapters of the DDM itself. We pick them in that way that the pillars are saying that there's a research work that needs to be done. There is an infrastructure assessment and restructuring that needs to be done. There's a governance work that needs to be done, and there's an economic positioning work that needs to be done. If you look on that, we move then within the sectors and say there are various sectors that we need to establish. And therefore, we establish what is called work streams in terms of that. The first one is to deal with the research work, your evidence-based information, your demographic profiles, and all those issues must be produced so that you know your information. And we move from there to say your infrastructure team must go and assess what is an existing infrastructure. And then we deal with issues of assessing our governance and looking on the gaps in that context. And we go and assess our economic positioning and be able then to combine and have a one document, one plan in terms of that. Honorable Leadership, I think we've moved steps in terms of delivering those. We can share with OR Tambo that currently, as we sit, we've produced a detailed demographic and district profile of the district. Last week, we were going to invite stakeholders to have a broad session of consultation because DDM doesn't move away or shy away from the fact that as government, we've adopted the National Development Plan, which in its center is saying that let's mobilize all the stakeholders, your labor, your business, and everyone so that they participate. That document is in place currently, and it's one of the fundamental documents that is going to drive what are the issues that need to be driven as the challenges that we need to do. What does it assist on? It's saying we are now not shooting in the bush. You know, when you have one bullet, you shoot in the bush, you don't know the target. But you are having an evidence-based information so that each and every sector can know what or where issues need to be addressed. It's in detail, and we have used various information that we have dealt with that. For instance, your municipal data intelligence information, your quarter information, your stats essay, the EXEC as a partner in terms of that research produced. We consolidated all those reports, and we want to share it also with the institutions of higher learning so that we can start now, when we are going to the level of our IDP situation analysis. That should be the base in terms of the information. We extrapolate our IDPs in that context. There are various findings that are coming out in terms of that report already, and we have drilled down to say, in terms of the findings, drilling down, for instance, I've extrapolated my report in one part of KST, where we are even going to a level of saying, in this ward, these are the services that are available, these are services that are not available, and we have moved it to another level of our spatial restructuring and spatial structured in that context. So that document is available as one of the key strategic documents in OR Tambo. There are key fundamental findings without dwelling much in terms of that have been presented in terms of dealing with the socio-economic challenges that we have to deal with OR Tambo. The other report that we have produced as OR Tambo, a detailed one, is a spatial restructuring. We have a spatial restructuring working report that also we have produced the beginning of November. That report also it's available. What we have done in terms of that report, we look on all the spatial planning frameworks as well as the legislative frameworks from your NSDF, your provincial one, the district one, and the local municipalities. We plot them and align them in terms of then how do they drive service delivery within the municipal space, and we're able to align it and be able to look on what exists and what doesn't exist. We look on the existing corridors and the centers of development and be able to then look on the gaps in that context. The report is available. Quite interestingly is that we are really a unilateral state. It's an evidence from that spatial restructuring that there is more alignment in terms of our national, provincial frameworks, as well as, again, there's alignment with our local municipalities. That's what we have picked up in terms of the SDFs in that context. Where there are no alignments, we have highlighted those areas, and we have picked up that key issues that are in existence are the areas that where municipalities are still reviewing their local SDFs in that context. And we are working on that. That also is a base document. When we are engaging with our stakeholders, we'll be able to say where do we want to go. Remember, the DTM is mobilizing each and every stakeholder to come together and have a focused development to where there is a need based on the evidence. And therefore, that's one of the strategic documents that we have produced, which is a chapter of the DTM. Lastly, I'm not going to touch much in detail because I've already alluded that we've analyzed those from the vertical point of view of SDFs. We've dealt with the horizontal level, and therefore, these are the results and the challenges that we've lifted in that context, making some recommendations in terms of the development. Another key critical issue that we've done, as a district, we have just produced in November this year, I think beginning of November again, the economic position of the district. We've been working with the sectors like EXEC and everyone to say, what is the economic position? What are the key economic levers of the district and potentials? So that we unleash on that. We've been able to deal with those. You know that there are various programs or strategic programs that we've been talking about, like your Mzimvubu development and all those. How do then link those? What are these issues that from the national point of view, provincial point of view, and local point of view, that there's a consensus around, and therefore so that we lift them and look on those potentials. We have consolidated that to an economic position of the district. It's one of the key fundamental documents or deliverables that we are basically looking at as a core document that now, when we talk about one plan, it will guide us moving forward. Key to that, we're moving towards and lifting what we need to deal with as a district decisively. The issues of land and all those issues are quite critical. What do we need to tackle? The issue of poverty that we need to tackle using those opportunities. What do we embark on? Those strategies that we need to embark on as we move forward. So that document also is available, and I think we'll share it with stakeholders. We'll share it also with the national government so that we all strategize together as we move forward in terms of one plan. Lastly, as OR Tambo, in terms of TTM, because when the president was launching that, was saying that we need to have a monitoring and evaluation. He even shared when he was in Sikisiki to say he wants to sit in Union Building and press by the click of a button to know what's happening where. We have OR Tambo initiated or developed your geospatial intelligence system. It's live, it's existing. We can give you the link in terms of that. All what we have talking about in terms of our economic position, all what we have talking about our spatial restructuring, all those we've already put into the system. You can click the button and be able to know what's happening. It gives you in detail to say what's happening in a certain ward. Why are we doing that? Because we're developing that monitoring system so that if you're sitting in Pretoria, you are, for argument's sake, in the tourism sector, you can be able to say, in Port St. John's, I'm looking to the face of my honored mayor of Port St. John's. In Port St. John's, this is the gap or these are the opportunities that you need to address in Port St. John's. And therefore, you strategize sitting there. And when you come down, you are able to say, at least I have a thinking of what needs to be done when you strategize. So that when we go to that one plan, we're able to deal with that. Key fundamental in that, we've moved to all the data sets in terms of that, developed a dashboard, and be able to mobilize all the stakeholders, even the institutions of higher learning, through that spatial system that exists. It's live. More important oral leadership is that when we share this with the DPME, it became that with all other pilots, they have an interest of taking and actually sharing that platform to all other municipalities. So as Eastern Cape, we're not bad as perceived because something can be shared all across the country at large. So I'm not going to dwell much, but the detail of that is available. As much as we have moved in terms of that, what are the opportunities that have been created by this as I sum it up? The model have already exposed that government is planning based on not an evidence-based information. And therefore, it creates to us to say, when we're planning, in reality, we must be based on the evidence-based information through those demographic profiles. Why we are saying that, we have picked the programs that are being driven by department, where they were talking about 12 billion that exist, but lifted those and say, were these focused on the challenges that are on the ground? Are they tending poverty, the unemployment and all those? And we found that no. And this is a model that will assist us to deal with those matters. And therefore, it will assist us. Again, it proved that within the COVID-19 pandemic interventions, through the model, we were able as OR Tambo to meet and complement each other as various sectors. The study when the COVID-19 hit the country or the continent at large was indicating that OR Tambo will be one of the regions which will be hard hit. It's hard hit, yes, we agree, but the manner in which we consolidated through the DDM, we're able to come with interventions and work together, complement each other in that context, and through this model, and that has been yielding results. Again, I think the model had created an opportunity or appetite for investors. Already there are various investors that had come and show interest to OR Tambo and region at large. And therefore, we are mobilizing those time and again. I think beginning of this week, we're engaging with the United Nations, Honored Mayor, where they are having interest to come, especially to the city of Port St. John's, looking on those bankable projects that can exist in that context. In short, I think DDM is creating more opportunities, and actually we believe then that it's more a regional planning that will assist us in ensuring then that we develop the challenges that exist in the region of OR Tambo. But quite critically, we can't drive it without having issues of leadership as being raised yesterday. We can't deal with that without ensuring then that we provide the basic services where it's needed. We can't deal with that without instilling good governance. We can't deal with that without having a culture of accountability. We can't deal with that without improving our municipalities to ensure then that they are able to generate revenue. Thanks very much, facilitator.
Thanks a lot, Bele. Yes, let's do clap our hands to appreciate the input. Thanks a lot, Bele. Thanks for that. I'm sure as we proceed into the discussions, we will pick up on a number of things that we have raised. But the most critical one, as I move over to Dr. Mnyimba, the most critical one that we have set from the outset, there's what I usually say, there are 4 no's. You need to know these 4 things. You need to know what it is, and you need to know why it is, and you need to know how you are going to deal with it, and you need to know who will be responsible for dealing with it. And I think in what we have raised, we have sharply put those 4 no's quite upfront. And I like the fact that you're mentioning from the outset, information data is the basis of doing all that we need to be doing. Because without knowledge of what is the problem that we are solving, there's one of our former state presidents who usually said, what problem are we resolving? That's a question that former President Thabo Mbeki usually asked. So if we are not clear about the problem you are resolving, rest assured you don't know where you're going. Thanks a lot for that. I'm not going to comment on the other areas, but I'm just asking the audience to make a mental note of this point right from the outset. Can I give over to you, Doc?
Thank you very much, Program Director. Program Director, I think we all agree with the presentation first made by Mr. Nyathela on the DDM, that the DDM, we must not take it as something that is new. There's nothing new with the DDM. As what we are doing through the DDM, we are actually going back to basics. As the Constitution of the Republic has already directed us, as the white paper on local government has already directed us. But we must agree that we deviated from what was set as the objectives of local government. And the DDM is an attempt, therefore, to bring us back to what we were supposed to do in the local government space. We will all agree on that. I'm not going to talk, Program Director, on the problem statement. Why the DDM? I think Mr. Nyatela also covered that very well. OR Tambo also covered that very well. I'm going to talk to Chairperson, what is it that we have done as Amatola? What is our approach as Amatola District Municipality as we aligned ourselves to the DDM? In 2017, 2018, as Amatola District Municipality, we realized that, as you put it, Program Director, we have a problem. Amongst others, Chairperson, we did not have a long-term plan. And we need to move away as local government to only confine ourselves to see as far as the 5 years of the IDP. We then developed a long-term plan, a 40-year prognosis, and we termed it Vision 2058, building a smart district. We had sub-4 themes or sub-4 visions within Vision 2058 to say, what is the impact we would like to see come 2058? How are we going to measure our performance come 2058? We then developed 4 sub-themes. Firstly, a dynamic rural economy. We do not have any intentions of becoming a city. When we say we want to be a smart, we aspire to be a smart district. We are a rural district. We appreciate that. But within our ruralness, how do we become smart? That is the question we asked ourselves. So firstly, we're saying we want to have a dynamic economy. Secondly, a sustainable district. A district that will be able to withstand the global disruptions. As if we knew we already had the climate change. How do we ensure that we are sustainable as a district while we're experiencing the pandemic called climate change that causes drought? As if that was not enough, COVID-19 hit us, a second pandemic that we have to deal with. And the question is, how do we ensure that we are sustainable with all these disruptions, whether it's a positive disruption or a negative disruption? Remember, we are also dealing with the 4th industrial revolution. Within our ruralness, how do we ensure that our communities are ready to be responsive and to be participants and beneficiaries of this 4th industrial revolution? Thirdly, we're saying we would like to see our district being a just and equitable district. How do we ensure that we empower the vulnerable groups, young people, women, children? How do we ensure that we protect and empower our communities, especially those that are vulnerable, the senior citizens? As much as they are senior citizens, they are off the market. How do we ensure that they still add value to the communities that they live in? And lastly, how do we ensure that our district becomes a resilient district? So those are the 4 sub-visions within Vision 2058. Whilst we were developing Vision 2058, Salga came up with the concept of a district development model. Then the question was at the time, how do we then align with the district development model as it was conceptualized by Salga? And we did that exceptionally well, working with Salga and MISA. There are 5 objectives set by Salga when they developed the concept. I think the first one was managing rural or urban migration, as well as sustainable growth and development. How do we manage migration? As more people are moving from our rural communities, moving to urban spaces, how do we come up with strategies to retain our communities in our villages? But how do we then bring economic opportunities within our rural communities? Because one of the most important reasons or critical reasons why people migrate from villages to urban spaces is to seek for economic opportunities. How do we then create these economic opportunities within our rural municipalities? The second objective was to determine or support local economic drivers. And the question is, how do we then capitalize on the natural resources we have in our rural communities? Both natural and artificial resources that we have in those communities. How do we then convert those natural endowments that we have, convert them to economic opportunities for our people within our rural communities? The third one is to determine and managing special form land release and land development. That is spatial planning. Mr. Nyatela spoke to that in detail. Amatole District Municipality, we have a 200-kilometer coastal line. It's virgin. How do we then develop not only a special development framework of Amatole, but how do we develop a coastal SDF to say, what do we intend to do with this coastal line that we have? But whatever it is that we do, we must do it in a sustainable manner and ensure that we don't destroy the environment. How do we come up, therefore, with a responsible development within our coastal line? Fourthly, determine infrastructure investment requirements and ensure long-term infrastructure adequacy. So, to support integrated human settlements, economic activity, provision of basic services, community and social services. When I respond to this program director, I always say, within our rural spaces, for any private investment to come, we must first put in public infrastructure. There must be public investment before we can attract private investment. As a responsible government, how do we then ensure that in our rural villages, we surface the roads, especially the provincial road network? How do we ensure that we have surface road network? How do we ensure that we bring electricity in a sustainable manner? We cannot be talking fourth industrial revolution and bringing in Wi-Fi in a village whilst there is no electricity, because Wi-Fi needs electricity. So we can't be dreaming big of bringing a broadband connectivity whilst there is not electricity in that village. So public investment, it is critical. I always, program director, ask a question. Is this democracy that we live in meant for our communities that live in urban areas and was not meant for rural communities. We have recreational facilities in the metros and big cities. But why are we not having these recreational facilities in our villages, the parks, and all those things? So the district developmental seeks to achieve these basic things we are talking about. I don't want to talk about DDM at a high level. My colleagues have already done that. But how do we get to the nitty-gritties, interpret the DDM at nitty-gritties? How do we ensure that we institutionalize long-term planning in local government space? We don't only limit as local government, because we think that as local government, IDP, then we have done it. No. How do we ensure that at a municipal level, we have a long-term plan, a 20 to 40-year plan, so that everyone, your 5-year term must be a contribution to the long-term plan. That's how we should be now thinking. That's what the DDM is bringing a program director. Now, quickly to program director, I'm going to now talk to what?
I'm just being warned
right.
that we're not doing well in time, but I do want to have all the panelists getting a share of the time. So I'm going to be a bit rough in managing all of you. So if you can take the next 3 minutes to round up, and so that I can give the other ones.
Thank you very much, program director. Lastly, program director, the district developmental, as my colleagues have already indicated, how do we invest in infrastructure planning and public investment as key enablers for socio-economic development in our municipal spaces? Talking on that point, Chairperson, we need to institutionalize infrastructure development management support at a district level. And the question, Chairperson, how do we then, Program Director, bring in Mr. Nyatela? How do we bring in our economic development agencies? Was there are district municipalities and metros, actually the district municipalities that have economic development agencies. How do we ensure that we bring in our economic development agencies to be part of this DDM? We need to reinforce technical project management capabilities within our municipalities, district. And how do we then provide alternative procurement strategy through the use of framework contracts to improve infrastructure procurement efficiencies and shorten the procurement process within our spaces? Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thanks a lot, Doc. And I'm going to not waste any time by I will come at
Limpopo, and to start Eastern Cape. Okay. Okay. If you recall, there were 3 districts. It was OR Tambo, the Waterberg, and eThekwini. As Waterberg, we were selected because we are a mining district. As OR Tambo, because you are rural. As eThekwini, because it was a metro. And there's just some quick background and the constitutional obligation that all of us, like my fellow panelists mentioned, that there's nothing new with DDM. It goes back to the Constitution, Section 154, which says we do have to cooperate with each other. The question then came, why are we not doing it? It's called DDM Update, Salga, member, on your file. Okay. The context that we worked on in Limpopo and as Waterberg was the district development model was primarily institutionalized for economic regeneration and for social justice. We Yeah, next slide. Oh. Next slide. Next. Next. Next slide. Next slide. Next one. I'm on the context. Yeah, I'm here. The first, go back. Thanks. We have the National Development Plan, which we all are working on as part of the developmental agenda for South Africa. And post that, we then had COVID. We also have the integrated urban development, and COVID has also revealed to us the socio-economic challenges, and it also impacted on the implementation of DDM. Next slide. This is just to recap what DDM is all about. If you recall, when the president became the president for the 6th administration, he said to us, the citizenry has said to him, "Khawuleza, Mr. President, we cannot wait." And post that, we then had to develop the one plan. Next slide. And then one plan needed to focus on the national budgets, like my fellow panelists has indicated, the provincial budgets, but of importance and key was the spatial referencing of all the programs of government and private sector. What was new with DDM was the whole question of international trade and private sector agreements, which we know that it's normally at a national level, but all the agreements have to be implemented at a local level. Next slide. There were primary outcomes and objects which they spoke to. Next slide. And there were also immediate implementation tasks. Those are they're there. You can read later. And if I take you back, some of the resolutions, and this is just to rewind, was that all the departments across all the spheres of government had to actively participate in the IDP planning process. Where we had a challenge, and I'm not sure if at OR Tambo you had the same challenges, was that when we were implementing, we struggled with national departments, projects and programs, where we could really put them in the one plan. We struggled to get provincial projects because this thing of the district being the center, it wasn't kosher for everybody. We also had to make sure that those budgets were informed by the IDPs. I mean, we all know places where you'd have a clinic that would not have water, and then you expect water affairs to put in a clinic, which is not part of the water master plan. There was also the establishment of the National Program Unit, which I think it's in the process or has been established. We were also supposed to have established the district hubs, all of us, by end of March 2020. But just as we were supposed to have the district hubs, COVID hit. So our district hub was only established around August or so. And Treasury was supposed to ring-fence funding for DDM. I'm not sure about OR Tambo, but we don't have a dedicated budget for DDM. But DDM was not, because it's not a program of government, it's supposed to be a collective of projects and programs. It's not supposed to have its own funding, but there's supposed to be funding ring-fenced, especially for infrastructure, whereby we don't take money for infrastructure for other things that we would normally take them for in municipalities. We were also supposed to strengthen intergovernmental structures for better coordination. What we found was that our intergovernmental structures were kind of dead, so we had to revive them. And the profiling had to be completed. Ours was lucky we completed it last year. It's 12 years down the line since we first launched, as per Main Nkosazana, Dr. Dlamini Zuma said when she launched the hub a few months ago. This is the process that we went. We had to move with the speed of lightning. We said we were on a supersonic mode, and we moved very fast. We launched on the 26th of November. Post the launch, what we did was the skills gap analysis, which MISA also did theirs for infrastructural sector. We developed the one plan concept document, which we took through our council so that we can adopt and agree that this year it's going to be reprioritization and the outer hairs. We will then involve and include all the programs. We did the profile gap analysis where we checked on our profile. I've seen that you've just done your profile. You need to go back to your profile and check what are the gaps that you're having in your profile, because there will be a lot of gaps. And the profile is supposed to be a living document. We also did the foresight in January, so we're very excited. This is still pre-COVID. We did the foresight assisted by the CSIR. We also had to report to the Presidential Coordinating Committee. This was around February. The hub was supposed to have been established, it established later, and we're supposed to continue engaging with the stakeholders. I'm on the post-launch update too. Not, okay. Some of the challenges that emerged, I'm on the slide that says challenges, go back. Back, yeah, on this one. This is what when the minister launched, they summarized as COCTA some of the challenges that we face as districts, and those are the governance and political service delivery, administrative and financial. I think my panelist and the previous panelist spoke a lot about these things. Next slide. And then just when we were rolling with the DDM implementation, we had COVID. This was the slide, this came as a cartoon in the Mail and Guardian, which showed the first 100 years. You remember we had the cigarette, people were angry. We had COVID, which came from Italy, and there were various impacts. And we then had to respond, like all of you, on the COVID. I know the Eastern Cape is still struggling as we speak. Next slide. I'm on municipal revenue. Some of the post-COVID and the things that showed the weaknesses in the system, especially at local government level, was the issue around default rate payers, the suspension of, and what we are proposing on the other side. I'm not going to go through all of that, but needless to say that during COVID, it showed that there are a lot of systematic problems that we're having in the local government space. We also, next slide, on the economic sector, if you'd recall, we were running like headless chicken trying to find the informal traders. Remember, we closed, then we had to reopen, then we had to trace all the informal traders, and we didn't, in most of our municipalities, we didn't have all those registers. We had the tourism sector, which is our key economic sector in the Waterberg, which came to a complete standstill, and we know that it contributes immensely to the employment of the district. We had a lot of infrastructural development projects that came because all the money was diverted to COVID. We had lack of technical skills. We are heavily dependent on the mining sector. Remember, we are also chosen because of the mining sector. We still have the water and rail and other infrastructure. Next slide. We can pass all the economic. I'm now on the slide on the domestic and gender violence. We are in the beginning of the 16th day of activism. And the COVID also showed that the statistics, for some reason, GDB violence really exhibited during the COVID. We had most of the common cases being, the issues of rape. We had issues of food banks and food security, which continues to be a problem because COVID showed us that a lot of our people are really very, very hungry. What I'm sharing with you in terms of the District Command Council was that, you remember, as all of us, we had to balance between the lives and the livelihoods. And now we are focusing on the economic recovery and also making sure that we continue to give sustainable services, and on the financial and the long-term planning and budgeting. On the reimagining Waterberg, I'm trying to move as fast as I can, Chairperson. On the reimagining of Waterberg, I'm on the slide, next move. Next slide. Yeah, I'm on this slide. You can see this slide is kind of upside down. It shows you, on the top part, it shows the green part, which is reimaging. We have been through fire, people, colleagues, we've been through a lot of fire. But what we need to do post-COVID, and this is part of the economic recovery, is to look at the green shoots that are coming post-fire. And with that, this is just a quick, next slide, a quick geographical map of what the Waterberg looks like in terms of the districts. There are 5 districts in Limpopo. The Waterberg also has 5 local municipalities. Next slide. We have been told, and also the Minister of cooperative governance emphasized this, that we need to look at the lessons from China, because with China, you know, they were talking about long-term planning. We all know that in China they have the 50-year plan, and that 50-year plan would be divided into smaller plans. And those smaller plans are what we would call our IDPs. But what would happen, and this is what we need to take to, especially the political leadership, is as we change the political leadership, we need to continue maintaining the plan. The plan should not change just because the political leadership is changing. So that's just the take-home message I want to put in here. As we reimagine Waterberg, we've got the 5 municipalities, and within those 5, next slide. In the five local municipalities, each one of them has its comparative advantage. So part of us as reimagining Waterberg is to look at each and every comparative advantage per local municipality, because that's only where we can really make a significant improvement. Next slide. And what we are proposing, because remember what we were told is that we needed to also develop the Kauleza forums. We are saying that the district command councils have worked very well, and we are proposing that the district command councils be the model for the Kauleza Forum. We are, the DDM has highlighted either the capacity of municipalities to deliver during COVID or not deliver. It depends on how you're looking at it and how your municipality worked. Where are we now? Okay, post-COVID, as we reflect, we need to focus on the post-COVID-19 and reflect on how we'll deal with the issues of the mining town, the issues of balancing the biodiversity, as well as tourism and agriculture. So there's a lot of competing needs. So this is my last slide, which is the conclusion slide. I'm almost done. No, the one before this one. If you have not heard anything that I have said, just to summarize, is that the president moved from Tumamina to Kauleza. You very inspired by Brahu. And what I need to emphasize, because every time we do a presentation of DDM, is does it take away any sphere of government? And the answer is no, it doesn't. The Waterberg is dominated by mining. We were expected to move on a supersonic speed. We have done that. We launched. Post-launch, we then need to have the one plan, one budget, one district. And now, as if that was not enough, to then deal with economic recovery plans and to reimagine Waterberg. We are doing this with a various number of partnerships. In the Waterberg, we've been very fortunate to have the PPGI, which is the Public-Private Growth Initiative. We have the hub through the DBSA, which is giving us technical assistance. We've got NBI, which is giving us retired personnel that will be assisting specifically in some selected municipalities for 20 hours in a month. We have catalytic projects that we are putting through, and we've got the partnership with universities, which is University of Limpopo and the University of South Africa on the SDGs and the localization of SDGs. Next slide. I will then finish by saying, and quoting again the RDP, which said local government must seek to help people generate economic wealth in their chosen communities. So we're not just about basic service delivery as local government, but we are also about ensuring that there is economic wealth wherever people are located, taking us back to our fundamentals as the RDP. And then last slide, and the president has said to us, unless we work smarter, all our plans to accelerate service delivery will amount to naught. So said Mr. President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Thanks a lot, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Well covered, and I'm sure we're taking points that you raised, and particularly from provincial departments, we must be taking mental note, particularly on the point you have raised about integration. Can I ask Mr. Mahlasela, and followed by, I'm not going to interject in between the two of you, both of you, if you can share almost, between the two of you, not more than 15 minutes, and then we come back to the last panelist, and then we take a discussion quickly.
Chair, I will be very brief. As you are saying, I think I won't dwell much on the contractual approach of the DDM, because the latter speakers have covered me a lot. But I think for the model to be successfully in our province, basically we need to ask ourselves that Do we view the model, or do we have the willingness at a political level and administrative level, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we have a policy matter that is not implemented, taking from the experience of the war rooms. Implementation of war rooms in the province is a challenge that we are still struggling. So we will have to ensure that at least this one, all of us, we are on toes to ensure that it is implemented. But basically, as we were listening to the presentation, various presentation, at the center of presentation is the planning, either on a short term or on a long term. But planning becomes key, which then involves every sector, departments, and every level of governance in the form of local, district, and provincial. So the coordination in the sense becomes key for us to be able to go around. So municipalities are developing IDPs, which are the key documents for the implementation of the policy matter, and contains the necessary, visions and aspirations. So in those IDPs, we need to ensure that these projects are incorporated, and as well as, because oversight. How do we ensure that we evaluate and we monitor the model and functioning to ensure that indeed the model is continuing? Because one of the fund of employments, to a point where that part of employment, forgetting that it is to bring basic service delivery to our people. So by attracting more investment through this model, will as well be able to assist us moving forward. But we will only do that, Chairperson, when we are strengthening our communication. Communication becomes key on this matter. Are our communities aware that there's this particular model? Are they aware? Because communication is the basic kind of an approach where people would know that at least there's something that they'll have to do. Going back to what other party somewhere at a particular time developed what was called the people shall govern. Because this element of communication emanates from that concept, the people shall govern. So as to eliminate all other areas where the people can misunderstood what is happening in terms of government. Because this is part of enhancing cooperative governance through strengthening intergovernmental relations. Because this is something that has to be communicated even in our IGR. Are the sector departments aware of the model? What is it that they are doing to ensure that the model is fully accomplished? What is it that they are coming in terms of programs? Programs that the sector departments have to do in our local municipalities. Review the infrastructure investment requirements to ensure the adequacy of support on human settlement. I think this model, Chair, will as well be able to unpack or unblock the necessary challenges that we are experiencing as local government in terms of human settlement development. Because in most cases, we used to work in silos when it comes to human settlement development, and have segmented approach wherein you would say this thing will be the responsibility of the provincial infrastructure. How do we coordinate and unite those programs in our planning so that we don't find ourselves stuck when it comes to a human settlement development? I think, Chair, in conclusion, one plan will be important, but these are the key issues that, as per the framework around the DDM, we should focus on. demographic and district profiling as indicated, economic positioning, spatial restructuring. Our spatial plannings talk to each other in terms of this development, governance and management. Do we have people to manage the process and to ensure that the process is accomplished? Infrastructure engineering and integrated provisioning. Lastly, Chair, for us to be able to ensure that, as part of motivation, let me quote to an American basketball player by the name of Michael Jordan. He says, if you are trying to achieve, there will be roadblocks in particular instances. I have heard them, everybody has heard them. But obstacles do not have to stop you. If you run into a wall, do not turn around and give up. You must ensure how to climb that particular area. Go through it or work it around. So these are the words that are critically, so that whatever we have challenges, we move forward. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks a lot, Prof.
I hope you can hear me. I think as I was sitting here listening to colleagues, I was like, I think this is the right space for actually all of us to be here, but also maybe even more of some of the municipalities that who had an opportunity to go through their IDPs at the district level in KZN and some of them here in Eastern Cape. Now, what we have been doing for a couple of years now, we have been studying how to integrate demographic dividends into the IDPs and making sure that we're able to plan, because we understand that if you don't integrate the demographic dividends into your IDP, you might as well stop planning. And what we find out are very shocking results. And as I'm hearing colleagues starting to talk about what's happening in Amatole, in different municipalities, and trying to respond to this, it's kind of a good story, which colleagues are starting to tell. We have done a study commissioned by United Nations, and of course, focusing on the number of municipalities. And some of the findings, and I'll just go straight because I'm mindful of the time, is that we find that the IDPs are not making reflection on the demographic dividends at all in some cases. And in the cases where they do, they are very sketchy and very rough and not telling a story, which will able to make them, to assist them to make any decision in terms of the planning. And of course, we've got a number of pillars that we've been using to assess that. And I just want to focus on one pillar, which is what we call demographic profile, which we look at it very closely. And what we find is that municipalities in their IDPs, they're not telling us who they're planning for, all right? They've got very beautiful plans, well done, but who are you planning for? How many people do you have in your municipalities? Some of them, they will tell us we've got so many people in our municipalities, but where are they located exactly? So if I come to your municipality, where do I find these people? How are these people scattered within your municipalities? The other area that we look at it is that who are you planning for in terms of the gender? Like, are they male, are they female? Where are they located? Where do we find those people within your municipalities? Because just telling us that you got so many males within your municipality does not help you to plan at all, because it's just a generic kind of story to tell. And especially if you're looking at it at a district level, which is supposed to be kind of a higher level of planning in terms of the local municipalities, and you just say in the district we got 20% of male. Where are these male? In which municipalities? And you must remember, it's very even difficult for the district municipalities, because if they are to implement something, it has to be into a space. And whose space is it? Do they have space in the actual sense? Or they're going to implement into one of the local municipalities? So the integration, therefore, becomes more important for us. And this is the part of the story, a beautiful story, which is starting to come up from some of the cases presented here. But also, key to that also is the issue around where are they coming from? These people in our municipalities. If we look, I can tell you 90% of the IDPs that we look at, they don't make a reflection on where these people are coming from, the IDP people we're talking about. They don't make a reflection on these people, are they South Africans? If they're not South Africans, where are they coming from? What are they here to do? Right. How are they surviving here? And we get shocked when people, they start fighting and we're starting having xenophobic and attack and all that. But it's something that we could have decoded during our situation analysis, and when we're doing our situation analysis. And what type of the migrants, and start asking the real question to say, what type of these people and the job which they're doing when they're in this particular area, are they kind of coming from another province? And why are they actually choosing these municipalities? These are the serious questions that we need to start asking ourselves into our IDPs. Then we're able to plan going forward. Then the other one is about the issues around planning for people with disabilities. And this is obviously different types of the disabilities. I can tell you it's very shocking that about 90% of the IDPs that we've gone through at the district level, they're saying they're very silent about people living with disabilities, but they've got programs of people living with disability. And when you start asking them, why is this that you got program to do for assisting people with disabilities, but you have no analysis around people with disability. They say, no, we've got programs, but people that are not actually using that. They are not using that simply because you are not talking to the people's needs. You don't even know the type of the disability that you have in your space. And because then if you know the type of disability that you have in your space, then you're able to plan according to that particular space of disabilities. So those are some of the issues that we've been picking up as we're doing the research. Then the other one is the issue around the population projection. Now, we all have a 20-year plan, a spatial development framework for about 10, 20 years to come. But for who? If you don't know the projection of your population in the future. How does it look like in the next 20 years, the next 30 years? Who's going to be in your space in the next 20 years? We don't know about that. We're not talking about that. But what we are talking about is we got a 20-year plan. This is where we want to be. But what if you won't even have anybody? What if people that live in your province? What if people that live in your municipalities? So those are some of the issues that we've been picking up into our analysis. And I'm so happy to hear that there's some kind of effort already starting around that. And I had some of the colleagues talking about doing analysis, what we call at a data zone level. This is at a ward level. Now to say, we need to start to know in your municipalities, how many people in this ward who are affected by what, right? So then you are able to plan and intervene. So I think I just wanted to make some reflection on that at a high level. So I don't want to take more time because most of the issues have been covered by colleagues. Thank you very much.
At some point, I should have invited people to clap for two things. Being concise, but also being very impactful in terms of where you're focusing us on. Thanks a lot for that, Prof. Say, over to you. Private sector perspective. You can take the platform, that's up to you. But it doesn't change the timing.
I believe kuyazwakala. Thank you, Program Director of the session. Angibingelele kusihlalo we-PEC kaSalga, together the PEC yonke, my fellow colleagues, the honorable mayors, deputy mayors, speakers, all protocol observed. My name is Thamsan Masibia. I'm with my HOD, Umama Undlovu Nzama, and my marketing department, Umama Umatiwane. We are coming from SBS Tanks. I believe it will be quite proper to be precise, just to introduce the product and also share with you our solutions in regards to water-related issues. As I'm saying, we are coming from SBS Tanks, based in Pinetown, KwaZulu-Natal. We manufacture, supply, install zinc alum ground-mounted reservoirs. The smallest one is 12,000 liters. I will put it very clearly because if I say in kiloliters, sometimes we are not that technical that much. The smallest one is 12,000 liters. The biggest one is 3 million liters. So as the company, having understood the challenges that are facing municipalities, we have decided to share with you our solutions so that you meet your targets, your mandate as the municipalities. I understand that Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, the issue of water-related deliveries are based in district municipalities, whereas in other provinces, they go other way around. We as the company, we would urge or lobby you to focus to our tanks. Looking at the challenges that we are facing as the country and the municipality, we understand that the budget of municipalities are not enough to serve us as the communities, where most of the time we look at water-related service delivery issues to be much more quicker, effective, and precise. Then our company can really meet your targets. Because if I can tell you, our biggest tank, the 3 million liter one, will take us only 17 days on site. But let's assume that now you are placing an order. Generally, we will request you to give us 6 to 8 weeks so that we can manufacture, deliver, and then implement and install our tanks. In terms of your budgets, you can realize from our product 50 to 80% savings, because as compared to concrete. Maybe let me share this. Our municipalities are really milked by the private engineers or consultants, because long time before, we were knowing only the concrete reservoir, but now, as we are innovating new ways and we are also going to a fifth industrial revolution, our product, our 3 million liter tank, can't cost you more than 4.5 million, irrespective of whether in Cape Town or Limpopo or Messina or everywhere. Whereas in concrete, you will pay more than 30 million. That's where then we differ from the concrete with our product. Program Director, let me not waste much time. I think some of the information that I can share through questions arising from the floor. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Spear. I'm sure from all of us, what we heard out of him is a very critical point that speed, scale, and cost are very important. We can leave out the advertorial parts, but let's hear that message from him. Speed, scale, and cost are the most critical elements in the delivery of the different services, as spoken to earlier on through the presentations that were made. Now I'm coming back to you, the most important people in this conversation, because you are not just an audience to listen, you are an audience to interact with the presentations that were made by our panelists. And I can just start by saying the most critical thing in this discussion, which is not going to be long, because the chairperson has told me that it should not go beyond 20 minutes. And am I right, Chair? Thanks a lot, Executive Mayor, for that 20 minutes. So what? We have heard about all of what they have said. So what? That's a question. So what? And the so what is not for them, it's so what for us as Salga. We've heard all of what they have said, but what are those critical things for us as Salga that we should take note of? And I do want to lead you by saying, amongst others that have been raised by the panelists, and I'm not going to repeat all of them from the beginning, which is Mr. Nyatela, down to the last panelist. One of the greatest things that have been raised, we need to ensure that people are aware from the different sectors about the DDM, they own it, and they are able on their own to then drive it from their sectoral perspectives. But the question is, so what for Salga? Then for me, immediately, as a sectoral association, I would interpret from what they have said, you have a responsibility to drive that awareness, to drive that ownership. That's a programmatic, first programmatic element that we should be taking from here. What does it mean? We need then Salga to get into its right platforms to then programatize that, ensure that they have a clear program element around that. The second example I'm going to make before I give back to you, there is a call from all the presentations that all of the plans that we have as the national government, provincial government, need to be appropriately spatially referenced because they are going to happen in a space, and the space is in our wall-to-wall municipalities. So what, Salga? So it means somewhere, Salga, in partnership with different organizations and departments of government, must find a way of synergizing all of these plans and helping particularly provincial and national government to appreciate and understand the spatial referencing of these plans. So if I may interpret it in poetic terms, you need to find an appropriate, not poetic, but artistic terms. You need to find a way where the tapestry of all plans in the country are able to read into the nice, beautiful picture that you always want to buy and put it on your wall, but with a clear indication as to where they are in the spatial terms. I'm not going to go into further details because I'm going to be working with you and summarize at the end. I'm here now identifying hands. Esisibane esike ndiyayiqonda uba kuba ke funa simlayitile umuntu olapha estage azobonakala kula TV iphumayo phaya ku YouTube. But esistrongo sibangela uba ningaboni phaya ezantsi, and maybe I should take off this. So people who are seated in this row, please pardon me, I wouldn't be able to see you because down that side I can't see because the light is shining on my eyes. Can I then take hands? I am noting Mengadolo and okay, you were helping me to identify her. Thanks, that's the first one. And please appreciate that I might not have another opportunity. Yes, please, at the back there, I can see a hand. That's a second one. I'm going towards the left of the room. Ma'am, are you raising your hand? Oh, okay. I can't see at the back there. If there is anyone, please almost make a movement and stand up so that I can see. Right, I'm leaving that area to the left of the room. I'm not seeing hands. There's a hand at the back. I'm told that's a third one. And those are the only 3 hands. Thank you. Mengatol.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to everyone in the hall, including my principals. Mine is just, it's not a question, but a comment, looking at the extent on which Limpopo is in terms of the DDM. I remember we were invited in one session by DBSA for all the provinces where the pilot is happening. But to Prof, I so wish you can assist, in fact, Salga to spearhead a situation where the assessment of the IDPs, the terms of reference for the assessment of IDPs, that should be informing the budget for municipalities. There is a whole week that is normally shared between COGTA as the administrator, inviting all municipalities to assessment as IDPs. It normally takes a whole week in a hotel. If those are the findings, what is it exactly that is being looked at in those IDP assessments. Maybe in terms of reference of that session should be shared, as you have done, Prof, to clearly inform, because we've been wondering if the municipal budget is like this and the IDP is like this, where do those integrate? If the findings are like that, I might say that's why we've got this problem. And also, when we invite departments to do assessments of the budget, we also look at the IDPs. But at that stage, it's already late, because a budget has already been assigned by municipalities. And even the findings that we normally come up with as treasuries, together with COGTA, they are normally now, in fact, even COGTA is in most cases is not even there. We invited departments that are supposed to be participating in that exercise of ward-based identification of the needs, because needs are in the local space at a ward-based level. So I would really request that we get those terms of reference that are used to do that assessment. Also, the last one is the state of local government has been issued by National Treasury. It has been issued today. I would request our political principals to just read that report and see what is the status in terms of what is happening in municipalities in the country. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mengatolo. Can I take the second hand at the back there?
Good morning, all protocol observed. Thank you, Chair. I've got a question and also a comment. And my question is not necessarily directed to anyone, but it was triggered by the presentation that was delivered by our counterpart in Waterberg, citing that they still have challenges in as far as cite national government departments towards identifying and consolidating their projects within the DDM. And as a background to my question, Chair, I want to re-amplify what was said by all the speakers here, that the model, it's not something that is new in government. Intergovernmental coordination and cooperation was introduced 24 years ago in Chapter 3 of the Constitution. And when the model was introduced, it was meant to address what we in government have not been able to achieve, and possible also disrupt whatever that we have been doing incorrectly. And the question now that I would want to ask is, when the IDP was introduced, it was meant to achieve what the DDM is also seeking to achieve by ensuring that there is integrated planning, budgeting, and implementation of services by the whole of government, all these spheres of government, and the coordination of sector departments. What is it that we need to do as the whole of government, not necessarily municipalities now, to make sure that we assist district municipalities in coordinating these government departments, recognizing districts as spaces for intergovernmental coordination, utilizing the district profiles to influence their spending priorities and prioritization of interventions for municipal spaces within the DDM model, such that whatever that they plan during their planning cycles and budgeting cycles is informed by the district profiles of the district, not of the municipalities, but of the district as a space, in ensuring that we achieve what the model seeks to achieve. That's the question, not necessarily for the presenter, but for everyone in the platform. And the comment that I want to make is that Waterberg indicated that the model is not necessarily funded, but within that, there is an indication that how the model will be achieved is that it will be funded through all the funding instruments that are allocated to all sector departments during their planning and funding cycles. And she indicated that probably there might be a need for ring fencing of infrastructure projects. Now, the comment that I want to make, which is a proposal, is that, in my view, we might not necessarily not even get to that stage, but get to a stage of ensuring that during the planning stages, given that the different sector departments have all been assigned exclusive and concurrent areas of functional competence and are allocated budget accordingly. During the planning cycles, it will be important that we reignite and improve intergovernmental cooperation such that during the stage of implementation, we then utilize the implementation protocols that are proposed in the IGR Framework Act for government departments who have got exclusive functional areas to enter into implementation protocols with other sector departments that are assigned a related functional area which is required to complement that particular service. A practical example would be if in a municipal space there is a plan for a clinic, Department of Health has got a functional area to do that, but for that clinic to have an impact, the Department of ESCOM, as an example, would have to bring electricity, Department of Transport would have to bring roads, etc. And if we're able to do that, starting from integrating planning at that stage, then those implementation protocols would be signed and the implementation then would be achieved jointly by all these government departments, such that we don't necessarily have to have a reinvest infrastructural projects that are going to be funded outside the normal funding cycle of government. That's my proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. The last hand was towards the end, that side.
Thank you, Program Director. I will not waste time. I'll just say all protocol is observed. Thank you for the opportunity. Program Director, the latter speaker has covered me in most of the comments that I had wanted to make in the PMA. However, I do want to say maybe all of us from the administration leadership and also from the political leadership, we need to relook at our IGR structures that are sitting, whether they are really assisting in terms of what we want to achieve in the DDM model. For instance, at the present moment, government departments are already planning for the next financial year, which plans will be finalized by March and effectively start to be implemented in April next year. As municipalities, we are doing our review of the situation analysis and our review of the objectives. And therefore, this alignment needs to be strengthened at that level, because if then the government departments or the sector departments are starting to plan now, and us as municipalities, we are starting to review situation analysis, we are starting to review our objectives, then at project level, how are we going to align all this? Hence, I'm saying that we need Salga Ec Pma to champion and strengthen all our IGR structures from IGR level at local municipality level to district development model structures, to the PCF that we sit in the Premiers Coordinating Forum. What is it that we can do to ensure indeed that if the latter speaker, as he's saying that if Department of Health is planning a clinic, for how many number of people, as Professor has said, how many number of people are we planning for that particular clinic? The municipality has to bring that information to the Department of Health. Department of Transport, we need to be saying how many number of kilometers of access road that we need to do for that particular clinic to be sustainable. So all I'm saying, Program Director, is all about coordination, is all about strengthening our IGR forums and forums, is also about a certain department, which is COGTA in this regard, to take lead in ensuring that in the IGR structures that are sitting relevant people, because it's something else that the IGR sits and the person that is brought into the IGR session doesn't even know the plan of the department, doesn't know how much is even budgeted for the department, and is saying that I am still going to consult. But in your attendance register, you'll have that all sector departments have been represented in the IGR forum. The IGR forum will tick in the box. It has set 4 times a year, and basically in terms of performance management, I've achieved 4 IGR sessions. And you ask yourself, what did they yield? What results did those IGR forums yield at the end of the day? So it is just my plea that everybody else needs to be called into the DDM model so that we can realize its objectives at the end of the day. Thank you, Program Director.
Thanks a lot to all the participants who've raised their hands and made their inputs. I want to walk with you somewhat a very delicate part, which will not take me 5 minutes, which goes into appreciating what came out of the panelists and the augmented points that you have raised. And I want to do a checkmate with you. And I want you to say, indeed, we have done something that is going to help us come up with a program. I already envisage 5 program areas for action from Salga, and I'm dealing with the so what. The first one is we need a very strong, clear demographic analysis of our individual district municipalities and local municipalities. And that demographic analysis cannot be different, Mengadolo, from the same in the province. So we need somewhat a cohesive, comprehensive demographic analysis of the province, which then must be able to interpret every space appropriately. With that, we'll then be able to understand our population dividend. Because remember, if you go into the economic front, it is the demand that will create the requisite supply. So if we have the population dividend, which unfortunately is threatened by the fact that people will migrate to other provinces because there is no created requisite supply and demand balance within our provincial economy and at the level of the regions. The second point aligned to that is the knowledge of our own resources endowment. And probably the need, therefore, for Salga to look at other tools of planning that should be invoked for this purpose. If you go back to the IDP toolkit of 2001, please do take the exercise to go back there. You will realize that we had already articulated as a country the asset-based community development approach, which is what the panelists have spoken about. The fact that we have an 800-kilometer seaboard as an Eastern Cape, Amatole is saying of that 200 belongs to us in the boundary sense. But however, all of us would agree that the third thing, knowing these resource endowments, they are not going to be on the basis of the boundaries that have been created in terms of our municipalities. The river that Amatole could be claiming in one particular area is the same river that would traverse up to the mountains in Krisani. So, the regional approach to planning must also be taken much more deeper. Who is going to assist? It's unlikely that as an individual district and or metro, I will in my planning anticipate and look at my neighbor. But however, Salga would play a role in actually bringing us together In OR Tambo, as an example, if you're talking about the opportunities of a special economic zone already declared as an industrial park, the feedstock of that industrial park will not only be coming from OR Tambo, because the primary activity is also in Jogabi. It's also in Alfredso. So the regional planning aspect becomes a critical, important step that Salga must come in and assist our municipalities to get to that appreciation, because the one plan will then be clearly articulated. Alongside that, the points that are being raised about the possibility of protocols, and I add to that, service level agreements with provincial departments. Uba bendingathi njengomzuzu ngesixhosa eyona nkathazo kuthi wena apha ephondweni is that when we sit in our boardrooms to do planning, we really are inward looking, and we are looking at the KRAs that are about our own performance agreements, and therefore we plan in accordance with that, which is unfortunate because it doesn't help the fact that we need to be relating our plans to the ground level. So we need probably to champion such approaches as Salga. I know COCTA will say the coordinating departments at the provincial level have what is called the integrated coordination framework. But however, that framework must now be translated from the angle and the perspective of the regional planning and include in it our district municipalities. That also talks to strengthening of the IGR structures. But I do want just to underscore the point on this one, which you have made. It is not about the sessions of IGR structures that sit. It is about the content. What do we bring jointly and collectively into these IGR structures? I would argue very strongly. Chris Hani would want to get into an IGR structure to go and argue that, for example, the roads network that connect Chris Hani to other economic centers are so critical that must be given attention to, and so on and so on. Then the fourth area that has been raised here, which I spoke to earlier on, is about the continuous creation of awareness and ownership. There is a popular term that we're fixing a moving vehicle or bus or even a boat on sea. We're not going to stop and say we are going to have a whole year of pure awareness creation. But however, we must integrate our awareness creation and ownership throughout the process. And we need an organization in Salga to be consistent in driving that program. And then the second last point is skills and capability. It is a known fact that all our municipalities have been eroded of particularly the technical skills. Because the labor market in the change in the democratic space, and including the political economy of the country, has made it that engineers see themselves now in engineering, private sector engineering companies, and that government is unable to match the actual incentives that are provided there. So we need a different creativity and innovation in how we're dealing with the skilling and as well as building these capabilities. Already, the DDM has a very clearly articulated approach, including the use and working with MISA and other partners in this regard. But we need to be deliberate, however, of looking at how we can have some of these skills resident within our municipalities. And I may just say, the unfortunate thing is, in the changing world of work, we need then to be very, very agile in how we deal with this aspect. If you are going to attract and employ an engineer and the regulations in the local government sector are so restrictive that you wouldn't be able to attract and retain an engineer, then there's a challenge. Hence, then there's a need for creativity and innovation in this regard. The last point is the one I started with, and it links to all of these different points. An urgent program by Salga to ensure that it reviews, studies first and review all the current, for example, I can list all the provincial plans. There is a PDP, which is cascaded from the NDP. There is the spatial development framework of the province. There is the infrastructure plan of the province. There is the economic development strategy of the province. There is the water services master plan of the province. There is the human settlement master plan of the province, and so on. Can we all be able as municipalities, with the help of Salga, read the tapestry that I was talking about from all of these and be able to zoom and zone it into our local spaces? So Salga must assist with that and ensure that that is done quite urgently, because that will then be giving essence and content to the district development model 1 plans. And to say the least, the DDM leadership is not a new thing. It's the new way of doing things, as was espoused quite in detail in the white paper. The 1998 white paper is very explicit. Even the copy of that particular page, which we used in the DDM, is directly extracted from there. So, to succeed in doing and implementing the DDM, it's going to be about reorienting ourselves and conceptually locating ourselves to what we had said then, and understanding the phases of that development and how we're progressing with each phase. If you remember, in the same white paper, we're talking about the maturity model of local government. This is then taking us back to that particular maturity model and the process towards achieving it. If I have erred in my moderation and made mistakes in how I have managed this discussion, I do want to say my apologies, but I do deduct from all the discussions these 5 areas of programmatic work that Salga needs to take care on. And of course, we also have a copy of an analysis that we did, Executive Mayor, of the DDM, particularly of OR Tambo. I know between the two of us, we still owe each other an interview, and I'm going to make use of this platform during break to have that interview with you so that we can complete that. In that analysis, which we will share, Fez will share with Mr. Matomela, we're actually enumerating all the different challenges in accordance with 7 areas that we actually identified as areas of lessons that we should be talking to, which, for the benefit of everyone, the awareness issue is the first one, the institutionalization is the second one, the third one is the coordination and support, has been discussed here, the fourth one is demographic and district profiling, the fifth one is the intra and intergovernmental planning and budgeting, and the sixth one, which, sorry, I forgot to include here, is the social compacting. And again, I would want to really argue, Salga take the role to become the co-creator of this DDM vision, which is the social compacting of all partners. And the last one, which also Mr. Matomela spoke to, is monitoring and evaluation. Chair, I'm now giving over the mic back to you. Thank you a lot for having asked us to play the role as we have played. Thank you. Imalo, masibuyele kula mcimbi. Zonke izinto zenziwa ngendlela ezintsha ngoku. Awunokufumana nje. Yakwamosana i-COVID mayihambe nami. Uziqalele yakho.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mosana, ngokuba directed the program. I think you have assisted us. Bazithathela ndizabanika. Ndizuvangana apha kuphethe mina ngoku. Thank you very much. Okanene noyika lento ye-COVID. Thank you. Lona anoma samesulela sesulile. Thank you very much. I think you'll come and take your bag here. We are saying that thank you very much, Salga, for the presentation. I think you have given us mind for thought when we are going back and you have said a mouthful. And also to look at the other issues that were raised, Mamungatolo, and other people who asked questions. Indeed, because and now provincial government and national government are planning for the next financial year. And as municipalities who are in the midterm, it means that the IGR session, and luckily now everybody can attend because of the visual meetings. Thank you very much. I'm releasing you. Masbaqhwabela, indeed. Nize ngapha nizophuma apha ngakum. I'm looking at the time. I know we didn't go for tea. We're going to go for a closed session. I think let us go to lunch because it will be a closed session when we come back. We're coming back at 1:30. Strictly 1:30. Mamulens, Tatu Janda will come over. Thank you very much. We can go for lunch. When we come back, kancinci, just few minutes. Kune-clip efanele uba mayidlale apha. Kenibone. For this BIGM, we mean business, guy. I've forgotten, just few minutes, fakan la clip. Then there are siyabuya noba iphele nini la clip. Nikhawulezise ukutya.
BIGM is a project that is funded by the government of Canada, which is Global Affairs Canada, in partnership with Salga and Federation of Canadian Municipalities. The aim is to strengthen the capacity of our municipalities in South Africa, which they are going to be supported by other municipalities in Canada. The municipalities in South Africa, they are focusing on two components. One is local economic development. Two is climate change integrating asset management. This project is inclusive of women, youth, and vulnerable population, so that whenever we do our work, we are including the people that are supposed to benefit in all the work that municipalities are doing. The partnership are between 6 municipalities in Canada, 6 in South Africa, where they are getting a support through job shadowing and capacity building by their partners. The partnership is between the 6 municipalities, where they are focusing on components 1,000 and components 2,000. On components 1,000, It's a Kocha local municipality, Bizana, Nushua, and Kinsabata and Dalinjemo. And on climate change and asset management, it's two municipalities, which is Dlambe and Port St. John's, which they are focusing on asset management and climate change for the program. They are being supported by the following municipalities, which is Stratford Caraddock, Bizana as their partner, Port St. John's, Fredericton, Kinsabata Dalinjebo, they are partnered with City of Surrey, Nushua, they are partnered with Innisfield, Dlambe, they are partnered with City of Orawa. Lastly, it's Kocha partnered with Prince Edward Country. Building inclusive green municipalities aims to strengthen the capacity of our municipalities in Eastern Cape to ensure that they build the capacity within their municipality through geographical information system, through regional economic development, through asset management and climate change. The aim is to ensure that our municipalities have capacity to be able to develop plans, strategy, and implement those plans where they'll be including vulnerable population, women, youth within their project. Thank you very much.
The interesting thing about Prince Edward County and the Canadian municipalities is their approach to local economic development. They have a very interesting inclusive approach where they include vulnerable groups in terms of the planning. These vulnerable groups include women, it includes the youth, and it also includes the disabled. The approach to local economic development is through a gender-based analysis where they consider the value that women can add in terms of economic development, in terms of their strategy and how they plan. They also use a tool that they call the Business Retention and Expansion tool. Through this tool, they keep a pulse on how the local businesses grow and how do they retain and expand that business. They also include another tool that they call the First Impressions Community Engagement tool. And Director Mabusela, who's sitting right next to me, she will introduce herself. She will expand on that tool.
What stands out for them is their tools, as they have been mentioned by the mayor. With the interesting tool that I can expand on, additional to the ones that he has mentioned, is the First Impressions Community Engagement tool, which basically is another consultative tool to establish what the people who are interacting with the municipality are thinking of the municipality. Do we meet the expectations? If you hear, for example, of Kocha or Jeffreys Bay as a safe town, what is the impressions there? Are we doing enough to expand on that expectation or that brand, and or what are the other areas that we need to improve on? As a way of example on that tool, when we implemented it in one of our big events, which is the surfing tournament that comes through the Winterfest, one of the responses that or common responses was we expected more signage around this event. So those are the things that you pick up, and so when you are developing your LED strategy, you are more responsive to the information that you have gathered.
We've also, through these partnerships and through the development of our LED strategy, we've also engaged in public-private partnerships. I think the one significant partnership is that we're developing a biomass plant for bio-harvesting. This will unlock so many opportunities for small and micro businesses because the capacity of the plant will probably allow about 40 to 50 small businesses to develop. In terms of that project, the SMMEs will probably earn something like up to 180,000 Rand per month. And this is very significant because if our SMMEs, 40 to 50 SMMEs, can grow in this particular way, it allows them to expand on and diversify on other businesses.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I think just additionally to that, we as a baseline document or a foundation document, we developed the LED strategy, which has been a full process that has gone through the year with inclusivity involved. And we've been also ensuring that the gender-based assessment in terms of the tool that we adopted from the Canadians was also factored in that process of developing the LED strategy. We are currently having in our budget now projects that are filtering out of that process.
Our first visit to Prince Edward County was around about 2018 when the partnership started, and I was very privileged to visit Prince Edward County and meet our counterparts on that side. The benefit to that was that we could start the project in terms of then it was LED as well as asset management. But the most significant thing was the on-site visits. We would like to give our heartfelt gratitude to our partners, Prince Edward County, as well as the funders of this project, which is Global Affairs Canada, as well as the major funder of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, as well as Salga.
Waterloo's municipality is in partnership with the city of Fredericton in Canada, together with the Buffalo City municipality in the Eastern Cape. Now I'll hand over to the senior manager to explain what asset management and climate change is.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. My name is Trebo Obose, Senior Manager, Engineering and Planning, Port St. John's. Climate change is a change in the average conditions of a region. This could be the average rainfall and the average temperatures. These may either increase or these may either decrease. So that is what climate change is. It is a change in the climate. Asset management is a systematic approach that an institution or government uses for it to realize value from the things that it owns. This includes either maintenance, provision, and upgrading and disposal of assets in a manner which is economically viable for that institution or that municipality that owns those particular assets. It is also wise that a municipality draws value from those assets by identifying where those assets are. You have to develop plans and means and strategies for you to be able to maintain those assets.
It is common knowledge that our municipalities are facing limited budget. And if you have limited budget, you have to make sure that what you do is something that will last forever. That is why it is important when we talk about asset management. The asset you have, how is it maintained? How long will it last? Its location, you must know where it is, so that when a challenge comes, you are able to locate it and be able to fix it on time. So the budget that we work with, as I have said, it's very limited. So you need to make sure that you have proper assets that are placed in proper places at the correct time. That's one of the lessons that we have learned in Canada, that they manage their assets very well. You will remember that in the olden days, for us, when you talk about assets, you were having chairs and brooms written behind the doors. But assets is not about that. It's also about the infrastructure that is not visible, like pipes. You must know where the municipal pipes are. How many are they? Where exactly are they located? And how will they affect the municipality? For example, if there's flooding, you know that where it should go so that you release the flow of the water. So asset management is very important. That's why we usually say you need to have a political will that will enable the management to work in a smooth way.
That can only be determined by us being regularly monitoring the asset that we actually have. At any point in time when there is a failure, that failure has to be recorded and the severity of the failure has to be documented in order for us to be able to determine that when the asset might completely fail, and we have to upgrade that asset at a period in time that will be economically viable for that asset to actually be replaced.
One of the lessons that we learned from Fredericton, is the way people love their work and the way people are respected by both politicians and the management. We would like to give thanks to Global Affairs Canada and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Salga, because through them we are now able to work better with our stakeholders. And also, it's good to point out that for the past 2 years, there have been no audit findings based on asset management. So we were able now to reflect on that, seeing that we are doing well. So thank you very much to Salga for having introduced us to these good partners.
Let me first greet the viewers at home and also the PMA. I'm here with the municipal manager, Mr. Mahlaga, who is going to elaborate on the technical aspects of the partnership. Firstly, let me say, as Mbizana local municipality, we're very happy during the time when the Provincial Members Assembly has nominated the municipality to be part of the partnership. The partnership with us, with the municipality of Stratoi Karadoy, it's working very well. The way that they have done, they are doing the partnership with the stakeholders. But if you are coming to our municipality, we were not doing like that. We have learned to work with stakeholders, and also we have started with the assistance from the Salga. Now I will give it to the MM, which is next to me, to elaborate on the technical issues on what we have done as the municipality.
The approach used by Canadians is an approach that is community anchored. Everything that they do from a social and economic development point of view is generally generated by community members, and then the municipality works in partnership with the community to implement such initiatives. That is the way they do it, and they ensure that vulnerable groups are at the center of whatever that they do. They are very strong when it comes to ICT, the technology part of doing things, making life easy. They are very, very strong with climate change initiatives to ensure that the world is a better place for everybody and we prepare for future generations to come. They are very strong when it comes to asset management and indeed working in a public service approach in ensuring that everything that we do for communities is indeed a community initiative and a partnership with the community being served. The major benefit was the fact that we mainly how things are done in a first world country, in a municipality that is ahead of you, what is the culture of conducting business, what is the culture of working with community members, and what is the culture of the way of working collaboratively with all stakeholders in a municipality. That was a huge exposure, understanding how other municipalities are doing, particularly Stratoi Karadoc municipality. We continue to work in that manner, and that is the exposure that we learned from them in how things are done and what needs to be done better going forward.
For us going to Canada and then Canadians coming to our municipality, it was not just spending of the money. When we were in Canada, we visited their infrastructure, and also we have seen their disaster centers, and also when they were coming to on our side, we have gone to the Red Hub, and also we have gone to Wild Coast to see the ocean's economy, and also we have visited the traditional council, so that we have visited their own traditional council, and then when they came here in Eastern Cape, they also went to our traditional area, so that we can check whether the way that the traditional leaders of Canada they are doing, is it the same as the way that we are doing here in the Eastern Cape. And also I have seen them even during the pandemic process while they were busy advising the municipality. That is why if you can look at the statistics, you can see that my municipality was doing very well during the level 5. Lastly, I would like to thank the people that they have nominated the municipality to be part of the project, and also the funders, the Global Affairs in Canada, which is our major funder, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and also our association, the Salga. Thank you very much.
South African Local Government Association, commonly known as Salga, in partnership with Canadian municipality, they have agreed on a program which is commonly known in this area as Big M, Building Inclusive Greener Municipalities. Nationally has afforded this opportunity to the Eastern Cape province, and 6 municipalities have been picked up to participate, partnering with 6 municipalities in Canada. And we have agreed that the 2 metros in the Eastern Cape, which is Nelson Mandela, is going to be an anchor for Kokha municipality, Tlambe municipality, and Ngqushwa. And Buffalo City is going to be an anchor for another 3 municipalities, Mbizana, Port St. John's, and KSD. This program is focusing on inclusivity in terms of economic development, but also looking at the issue of management of infrastructure. But key to both is also the issue of climate change. We have allowed these municipalities to visit each other. The Eastern Cape ones visited Canadian municipalities, but also Canadian municipalities, all 6 of them have visited their counterparts. This is showing some improvement in terms of the mindset of both the administrative and political leadership of all these municipalities, including the anchor municipalities. There is, again, a focus of inclusiveness in terms of the skills at the level of the municipality, but also working with the communities, especially women and children. And again, the focus is for all vulnerable groups. Also in both areas, whether you are talking economic development or you are talking the issue of inclusivity, greening, but also issues of climate change. The communities, business community, community in general, are also taking part in terms of working for the success of these particular programs. At the beginning, we were focusing only on these 6 municipalities, but we are saying, let's showcase, start with all the municipalities that are along the coast, but we also started working with the municipalities under the program of Karu, and in Sarah Bartman, we were joined by the agency of that particular municipality, but also the Kokha Development Agency, helping us to navigate through working with these municipalities to build their capacity, but focus on business and also working with the communities and the business community. Thank you very much.